It's a spiritual war. If you turn a blind...
Nice to be up here with you, and thanks to the dog as well, really. Well, I don't know if you all know, but Liverpool, which is our nearest city, has the largest 5G network in the whole of the UK, second biggest in the world. And we're determined now to make sure we put a stop to that. So I've been involved with this issue for now over 20 years. I got involved in 2001 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I'd been living next to a phone mast for over, which was 100 metres from my house. And I was only in my 30s then. And I discovered a cancer cluster around the mast. Not just a cancer cluster, an illness cluster. And lots of us had had symptoms of headaches, sleep problems, skin rashes, and not really connected it to the mast at the time. And it wasn't until we were all getting diagnosed with cancer at the same time, all at young ages in this small village in Wishaw in the West Midlands, that we started to realise it must be something environmental. And I don't know if you can go on to my next slide. But anyway, So we set up a local campaign group called SCRAM, Seriously Concerned Residents Against Masts. That was in 2002. And we took that on, that went on to a local campaign group until we eventually got our mast removed. And that was a massive campaign. We were on GMTV this morning, Sky News, everything. The mast was actually torn down on bonfire night. So no. We still don't know who done it, whether it was Guy Fawkes or what happened, but we were determined to make sure it didn't go back up, and it didn't go back up. But I never stopped there. I just couldn't let go. And, I then got involved with the Radiation Research Trust, and I was quite naive at the time. Because we'd had such a massive grassroots campaign, I was being approached by politicians and asked to take part in discussion groups at the Health Protection Agency and within the EU Commission. And so I actually thought, oh, well, when they realise how serious this is, we can get legislation changed and something done, quickly from the top down. Now I realise the only way you're going to get something done is going to be from the bottom up. It's got to be from the ground up. And so I've been involved with this issue for all these years, worked with scientists from all over the world. I've actually even been to Russia and stayed with the head of Russia's radiation protection, and they have much lower radiation levels than we have here in the UK. They've been over here, the Russian scientists, trying to warn our politicians that it's dangerous for our children, and they weren't being listened to. So, if you go back to one of those slides there, this shows a picture of where I lived. And out of the residents living around that mast, the health survey report that we did, over 77% of us have become ill, and that was up to 500 metres from the mast. So this was in a village area, And then at the same time, the mast was owned by T-Mobile. And we were pleading for our lives, we were pleading for our health, we were pleading for them to take this mast away. And they kept telling us it was safe. And it wasn't until years later that we found a report that had been done at the Ecology Institute, commissioned by T-Mobile. And they'd actually, if you go back to that one, they'd actually studied over 220 peer-reviewed published papers, and they found evidence for effects on the central nervous system, cancer-initiating and promoting effects, impairment of certain brain functions, loss of memory and cognitive function. And they informed they informed T-Mobile that the radiation levels were too high. Well, this report was left in the German language, wasn't found till years later and translated. So all the time, while we were pleading for our lives, they had this report and they didn't tell us about it. So, that's just 220 research publications. There are thousands, which we've since found out. But just on base stations alone, there's a compiled list of 33 studies just on phone masts. And out of the 33, 32 of them have all found effects. And the only one that didn't was the one that was commissioned as a review for ICNIRP. So that comes as no surprise. This image is so alarming, and the industry went out to try and bury this study. The Reflex study from 2000 to 2004, and it was funded by the EU, €3 million. And it was 12 research groups in 7 European countries. And what it shows is you've got an image of a cell there, and then an image of a cell that's been exposed to 1,600 chest x-rays. And you can see the DNA damage coming off it. Well, the image that's similar to the 1,600 chest x-rays had been exposed to just 24 hours of radiation from a mobile phone. That's how serious this is, this radiation, and it's everywhere. So in 2011, so from when we've had our battle from 2001, 10 years later, World Health actually classify this entire spectrum as possibly causing cancer. And scientists are saying there's enough research there now to say it should be known as a group 1. It is a known carcinogen. So, and since then, the evidence just continues to increase. I don't know how much research they need or how much evidence they need. 2 of the biggest animal studies ever done in the world, the 30 million National Toxicology Study in the US and the Ramazzini study in Italy, both found clear evidence of cancer in their studies, and these studies are just being ignored. So, and you've got the Bioinitiative Group, a group of independent scientists who come together. They gathered thousands of research publications, and in that they found evidence in all the peer review papers that they looked at, and they've called it, they've called for the precautionary approach. They've said urgent action needs to be taken, and that these diseases include effects on the central nervous system, cancer, same as what we've just, been told from the Eclog study. And these are the consequences. This is a face of a young girl, Jenny Fry, who committed suicide. I'm in touch with Jenny Fry's mother, and no one would listen. She was suffering with electrosensitivity, and the school had Wi-Fi. Her mother did everything. She got in touch with the school, pleaded with them to turn the Wi-Fi off, but they were making things worse. They were giving her detentions. They weren't listening to her. They didn't believe her. She was suffering. At home, she was okay because, they had a hardwired system, no Wi-Fi. Her mother went to the chief medical officer, the NRPB, public health officials, her MP, her GP. No one would listen. And eventually she hung herself. And her mother campaigns to this day to try and get this, recognition and protection for children. But since then, there has been a case that was won for another child who was electrosensitive. And the parents who fought this case, the judge agreed that the child should be considered as disabled under the Equality Act 2010, and she was awarded a special education care plan. So this is something people need to be alerting all the schools to, that we want the system to be hardwired for our children. They should not be going into classrooms full of 30 computers, Wi-Fi everywhere, and putting their lives at risk. So this brings us up to where we are today. I mean, I've visited lots of cancer clusters, lots of illness clusters over all these years, over this 20 years, but today I'll focus on what's happening in Liverpool. I just heard in the news recently that there'd been an outbreak of illness in a school, in a primary school in Everton. And straight away, I thought, something not right here. I bet you there's a mast. and then I heard of 2 young children who died in the same school. So decided, seen lots of reports on the main news, but no sign of a mast. But I decided to get on Google Maps. Lo and behold, mast right outside the school, right on the pavement. And you can click on the little YouTube link there, but this presentation will be made available for everybody to have a look at, and you can look up for yourselves. But we brought a radiation expert to have a look and see what readings we could pick up. And Glyn Hughes from EMF Protection used an FM5 meter, which is one of the meters that can detect 5G and all the other frequencies. And he was in shock. You'll see on the video, he's in shock. He's detected the highest reading that he's ever come across in 20 years of working with this campaign. And this was the mast right outside the school. So when you check on the map for the postcode area, you'll see that it's got 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, 5G, Ultra, everything in that area. The area of Liverpool that has the highest network in the whole of the UK. And so I got in touch with Mona Neeson, from who's one of the researchers with Leonard Hardell for the studies that have been published in Sweden. And they've done a number of studies now, and they've got, I think, 7 case studies published on 5G, and they said they're picking up exactly the same really high peak frequencies, to the point where the people who are being exposed to it have had to leave their homes. They haven't been able to return because their illness is that instant, and the only way they'll recover when they go to somewhere, to somewhere away from the radiation. But they said it's really frightening, and that's what they're finding in Sweden as well. So the readings and what they're picking up there corresponded with what we got outside that school. So I decided, well, here on this one, I decided to write to the Health Security Agency, knowing that they will put up a smoke screen and say that ICNIRP is. You can preempt what they're going to say, that it's all in safety levels, it's still within the safety levels. So I got a response back only just a few days ago to say that exactly that was all within the safe levels of ICNIRP. I mean, these levels are just beyond only protect your body from heating. That's it. These levels are only in place just for a short-term exposure. They've only studied them for a 6-minute sort of exposure near field or 30-minute far field, but we're actually being exposed 24/7. And children as well. So they haven't. We're all different in people. Other people are sensitive, and like we were saying, some people might have metal in the body as well, which the guidelines don't cover. So I decided I had to write a selection of letters. To the Health Security Agency, to a number of MPs in that area, local councillors, and alert everybody to it. And within the letters, I've just highlighted some of the points that I've raised. And within it, I've asked them a set of questions. And one of them, is it wise to ignore the UK Stewart report that was published in the year 2000? Sir William Stewart was actually the government's chief scientific advisor at that time. He was also Margaret Thatcher's main advisor, and then asked by Tony Blair to actually carry out a report, which he did with a group of scientists. And these are some of the recommendations. And I actually got to know Sir William Stewart, and he was actually a decent scientist, and he was concerned. And within that report, they came back with the response to the government in the year 2000. And from some sections within it, they said there's now scientific evidence, however, that suggests that there may be biological effects that occurs below these guidelines. He said, we conclude that it's not possible at present to say that exposure to RF radiation, even at levels below the guidelines, is totally without potential adverse effects, and that there's gaps in the knowledge to justify a precautionary approach. He also said, the beam of greatest intensity should not be permitted to fall on any part of the school grounds or buildings without agreement from the parents or the school, and that children may be more vulnerable because of their developing nervous system and the greater absorption of energy in the tissues of the head and a longer lifetime of exposure. Well, they've completely ignored all those recommendations. And 5 years after that report was published, Sir William Stewart even strengthened his concern. And he actually even went on Panorama and he spoke about his concern for children and their exposure to Wi-Fi in the schools. shortly after that, he was no longer working for the UK government. So that is one of the questions I've asked. How can they answer them questions? You know, how can our local councillors come back and say anything contrary to what was recommended? And this mast is right on the pavement outside the school. So my next question that I've asked, is it wise to ignore the concerns that are being raised about ICNIRP? There's concerns about ICNIRP, there's published papers. The concerns about ICNIRP have been raised in the courts by EU officials, by scientists from all over the world. And in this review, a published review, they're saying that, you know, that the scientific quality that is not built on solid or established knowledge base, and that it's not good governance to follow the ICNIRP guidelines. So, you know, then I've actually highlighted some of the information that our UK Health Security Agency provided within their letter trying to reassure us that it's safe. And I took out one of the sections with it, which says they provided in their link, paragraph 5 states, with some of the larger, more powerful base stations, there can be regions around the antennae within which the guideline levels can be exceeded. And operators need to identify the extent of such regions to prevent access to them by the public. Well, these masts are getting put right outside people's houses. They're right outside apartment blocks. They're not making, you know, they're not telling anybody. If you ask them, you know, where's the exclusion zones? Are there exclusion zones? They won't share that information. So, you know, another claim they make. Independent expert groups at the UK international levels have examined accumulated body of research and evidence. They're relying on ICNIRP again. So I've pointed out in my letters that the 2020 guidelines that they're relying on does not protect people with metal implants. Same in the 1998 guidelines. Doesn't protect anyone with metal implants. And there's been a recent court ruling, Thomas versus Cheltenham Borough Council, where the court found that the authorities' failure to address the potential impacts of the proposed equipment on individual with medical implants is an error. So we've now got this court decision that's saying the councils need to consider health. So the truth is on our side. We've got all the information on our side. We can smash everything they say, everything. There's a collection of letters here that I've written. There's links to every one of them. And the final slide, I've actually just desperately trying to get the public to wake up and do something about it. And we're actually going to our council meeting next week, a group of us in Southport. And there's a number of us, we're raising questions. I've put a question in, and I've backed it up with lots of information. They've actually had to send it to their cabinet member for health. So they'll have a response prepared, but I'll be able to go back and ask another question, supplementary question. There's other people from concerned residents that are coming, and they're not used to getting questions. They even admitted that to me. They're not used to it. So we're going there, a number of us, next week, to ask questions of the council, and we'll be asking them to answer every one of the points raised in them 3 letters. There's a lot more detail in that. And what I'd encourage you all to do, there's leaflets here. You can actually use them. Liz has kindly printed them. And inside there's a little section in there where you can just fill your name and address in, send it to your MP. On our website, there's non-consent forms. You can download them. It's all done for you. You just need to fill in your name and address, send it to your MP, telling them you do not consent to being irradiated. And you need to really take action. You could start by just downloading them letters, 3 of them letters, send them all to your MP, all your councillors, and ask them to answer the questions contained within them letters, and take them to your local councillors, ask them to do the same, and see what their chief medical officers come back with in a response, because they'll only respond with we're working within the ICNIRP levels. Well, we know that's a joke, and that's completely been destroyed by not just by the information I provided in them letters, which is all the information that thankfully we've got from the brilliant minds, the scientists, the doctors, and people who've been working, for years on this. It's all there for us to use. So the argument, the truth's on our side. It's just up to us to use it now. So, pleading you to do it.